Late game Gregtech forces you into crafting trees that take over 30 minutes in real life at least, and waiting has become so boring that I've decided to take the Walt Disney route and cryogenically freeze myself until I have the Stargate. The problem, my current freezer just isn't cold enough. I need one powered by metals so complicated they're entirely theoretical. That's right, we're making Neutronium, the highest tier material that we can get our hands on, forged in particle accelerators and made partly of fantasy metals. And worst of all, synthesizing such a complex metal requires more power than I could possibly supply, so my base's power generation will need its final incarnation. We're first going to need a computer capable of handling such impossible materials and power generation, so of course we need wetware circuits, an unholy fusion of brain and silicon, the highest tier of circuit that we can obtain. Side note here, the highest tier of circuit that we can obtain in the version I'm playing. This is a pretty outdated version of Star technology, but updating would remove a ton of my progress. So if you're playing the most up-to-date version, the end of your game is probably going to be different than mine. Back to the video. We already have the infrastructure for the circuit boards, but biochaff, a vital resource, is running incredibly low. Thankfully, we can use magical plants to make potatoes, which we can process into biochaff extremely easily. Now, in order to grow wetware circuits, we'll first need to create stem cells. They'll need a supply of bacteria, which is currently inaccessible, so I engage in some classic factory rearrangement in order to expose our bacteria production to be rooted into stem cell generation. Still, our sterile growth medium production rates are low, and we need more meat, more fish. And you guys reminded me of the aquatic entangler from thermal, so it should be easy. I just gotta figure out how much. What does this need? Should be easy. I just gotta figure out how much water does this need. I must not think about the fish box. The fish box is the mind killer. And it also makes me a ton of meat, so like it's fine. Just don't talk about the fish box. We now have all of our passives up to speed and production lines ready for the Neuro CPU, the last component of the wetware circuits. Now LUV and ZPM circuits are stupidly easy and cheap for us to craft, and we'll want to go ahead and replace the current crystal circuit recipes with them. But UV and UHV circuits now require both research and the assembly line, so we're not out of the woods yet. In fact, the UHV circuit requires our assembly line to be exactly 1 block longer. But let's start with research because of course we're going to need more computation. And in order to make a new HPCA, I need to go and tediously re-encode all of the old circuit recipes into the new wetware versions. And I mean, we all know what it looks like to build an HPCA, so there we go. I've researched the circuits. But now to our extended assembly line. And the craziest thing is, it's easy. I mean, I remember when the parts for this were so expensive they took forever to craft, let alone put together, but now they're just simple blocks. It took me seconds to make them. This is, of course, in stark contrast to how stupidly expensive the high-tier wetware circuits are. Why does a stupid brain computer need so many resources? Greedy eldritch abominations. At our current tier of tech, the UHV circuits take 100 seconds to craft on their own, but that's not counting the 3 lesser circuits crafting time, so I'll really want to boost the base to UV power, but you heard the intro, we're low on power, so that's not happening anytime soon. But the wait is worth it. To hold the most powerful circuit I can craft. This feeling. This neurodivergent bliss. Is this dopamine? I need more. The base must become UV tier. There is no other option. Freya, Daddy's recording voiceover right now. The base must become UV tier. There is no other option. Let the overclocking begin. I craft absurd amounts of energy hatches and even 2 16-amp converters. I mean, what could I possibly need 32 amps of UV for? Well, I'm fitting our circuit assembler with 16 amps of UV. That's UEV tier for parallel resources, meaning we'll be getting the absolute maximum power from our circuit crafter. That might take my power supply, but baby, the serotonin is flying. It used to take us 30 seconds to make 1 Neuro CPU, but now we can make 4 in 8 seconds. Time to UVify the rest of the base. And to completely geek out our base, I put another 16 amp energy hatch inside of our assembler for astronomical speed increases. And boy boy, do our assembly lines look pretty running at UHV tier. Ugh, don't they? And hey, while I'm at it, let's upgrade the maintenance hatches in our assembly machines to a cleaning maintenance hatch. That means it acts as though it's in a clean room, so now all clean room exclusive recipes can be made in our bulk assembler. We should definitely address the new power needs here, so let's add another solar panel, right? This time I'm going to go for the highest tier. There's no actual efficiency boost from these to the current ones we have. They're just more compact and lag efficient. Just 16 of them is worth 256 of our current ones, meaning we don't actually have enough resources buffered to make 16 of them. So I start with the craft of 8 of them, and oh my god, it turned night and we zeroed out on power. It seems in the quest to increase my power gen, I drained my power completely. Now the system is slowed to a crawl and can barely continue the now entirely necessary craft. I have to run the base on life support, disabling and re-enabling machines left and right to make sure necessary crafts can make it through. Oh god, and so much waiting. And after what felt like hours of microing my base, I made one solar panel. And even still, of course, the base can barely handle crafting another. At this point, I submitted myself to running the base entirely on life support for as long as I needed. So, I turned off my recorded and grinded. Right up until I ran completely out of iridium and polybenzimidazzle. Luckily, all we need are a few more large chemical plants and fluorine. How do we run out of that? Oh, I mean, I might have to do with 30,000 buckets of hydrofluoric acid laying around in my storage system. From what? Well, damn, okay, I guess we need more fluorine production, and now. And why not just Hail Mary it? We're at the endgame, really. Just grease the wheels of industry with fluorine. The plan, make loads of gravel, crush it, spin it, and then electrolyze it for tons of fluorine. We'll need the big boy parallel multi-blocks to get a decent output from this, including the large sieve cobbleworks, which means we need a few pieces of pure netherite. Worst of all, we bottom out on aluminum. Aluminum? Well, anyways, that means I need to boost our ore sieves to ZPM tier, forcing them to consume more resources than they have access to. So we no longer need a few pieces of pure netherite, but a whole lot of it. So it's probably a good idea to set up another passive line for those. Our first hurdle is a lava passive, and we'll need thousands of buckets of it to produce even a few pure netherite, but we're also still out of iridium, so we need to chemical plant, which we need fluorine. I need iridium to... Okay. Well, as a band-aid, I can electrolyze our spare hydrofluoric acid to get a supply enough to make a chemical plant. Chemical plant, save me! Well, it can't on its own. I need to sever the old platinum processing lines and reroute some of the items back into the AE system so we have a network-wide access to them. Then it's really easy to use the chemical plant as our platinum processing because it changes it from 1 billion steps to one single step, 2 if you count remixing the aqua regia. And not only is it more simplistic, but it's way faster, so of course iridium is back on the menu, boys. And we need iridium. For netherite. That's right, that's what we're doing. Okay, so let's buff the oogles out of our lava processing and learn a valuable lesson about standing on metal pipes full of 1300 degree molten stone. But in the end, we've got tons of netherite being made extremely fast. From there, a parallel macerator to crush it, a parallel extractor to create a glomeratio, and lastly, a parallel centrifuge to extract the trace amounts of netherite. Then that can just be put into the AE system and auto-crafted into pure netherite ingots. So now, okay, I've got the fluorine, I've got the gravel. Yes, we're making gravel? All of that for gravel? Nay, all of that for lots of gravel. Gravel for fluorine. You know, it's funny, because I swear the topaz fluorine line was pretty fast, and... Hey, there should be a drawer there. Wait. It just broke? It wasn't too slow? I didn't need to do any of that? All I did was break the aluminum drawer. The one aluminum drawer in my whole storage. That's why we ran out of... Well, time to cope anyways and just make the large sieve cobbleworks and fluorine line from it. Honestly, it's a simple process at its core. Gravel into stone dust into biotite dust, biotite into fluorine. Easy peasy, definitely lemon squeezy, didn't take years off my life. Okay. Now that we have fluorine and iridium, we can make more solar panels, but even making 16 of them just tanks my base's power supply. I don't really think solar panels are the best for us anymore. I mean, there is another option. If we're overhauling power generation, we need to overhaul power storage as well. The substation is a beast of a multi-block that can hold trillions of EU inside of it. And using converters, we can change it back into FE to work with our FE-based infrastructure. Perfect. The substation requires capacitors for power storage, and at the moment we can only afford the ZPM tier ones, as UV and above ask for Neutronium, which is, you know, kind of the whole point of doing all this. But the power modules required for such advanced capacitors actually need insanely long assembly lines, like physically insanely long assembly lines, so I may as well make the big boy, a maximum length 16 block assembly line. Hold on, we're out of iron? What? Since when don't I have a smelting recipe for iron? Jesus, what is wrong with my base? Okay, anyways, boom, 16 length assembly line. That's 16 big booms. We can encode all the recipes for the new power modules, but first we really do need to actually research the things before I can craft them, so pause of science. Unpausing the science, these modules are real pieces of work, but hey, the power storage is worth the effort. After a very, very long craft, I've got a pillar of energy storage for 432 billion EU. That is over 1.6 trillion FE, but honestly, that isn't even as tall of a substation as we can make. We can do way better, but first we're gonna need a whole lot more epoxy and rubies. So first up, a large sea of cobble works for sand production to make more ruby ore, and next a large chemical plant for epoxy. Another lengthy processing line has been reduced to a single step. I love it. And after another AFK session to let the capacitors craft up, yeah, that's a nice power station right there. But of course, with all that power capacity, we do need something to fill it. Solar panels just don't cut it no more, and now that crafting sessions take so long when I AFK, the solar panels don't even work at night. So in the background, I've been making tons of melodium ingots, because it's time. Time for plasma turbines, baby! We'll be burning helium plasma in order to generate insane amounts of EU per tick, and to make our precious golden plasma, we'll need another particle accelerator. We're back to the particle accelerators. Thank God, I was beginning to forget. I was beginning to forget. I'm going with a Mark II, but no doubt that'll upgrade at some point to a Mark III. And even with all of our fancy new machines and upgrades, Mark IIs are still crazy expensive, and I have to run around performing little fixes to recipes here and there to even cue the craft. Thankfully, you guys gave me loads of tips on reducing the cost of reactors, like using reactor glass and wall sharing, and that actually massively reduced the time it took to make this. Rare comment section W. And lucky, helium plasma is pretty cheap, all things considered. To use it, we'll need to use plasma turbines, so it's time for recipes and research, but in the end, we have 4 of them, equipped with high-efficiency melodium rotors in fancy UV tier rotor holders, and 16 amps of UV power throughput to boot. The turbines have loads of building restrictions, so they aren't great for wall sharing, but honestly space isn't a concern, and their casings aren't expensive, so floating turbines it is. Their melodium rotors are important because the better the rotor, the more power a turbine can generate. Melodium is the second best, with stellarium being the best, but requiring, you guessed it, neutronium. We feed the turbines helium plasma, and they make us helium gas and loads of power. With everything hooked up, and actually remembering to use the right tier of dynamos on the substation, I can get the dynamos spinning up. The amount of power they make is determined by how fast the rotors are spinning, so the longer they run, the more they make. And sure, the substation will fill up and eventually shut off the turbines, but it doesn't take too long for them to spin back up to speed. And boy, when they reach speed, we're making such a stupid amount of power. Just look at the big number get bigger. Just appreciate that for just a second. Just pause the music. Pause the edits. Just look at that big number. Alright, back to it. Our base's power draw might still be astronomical, but our power generation well outclasses it. And once we have that wonderful neutronium, we'll be able to double our maximum capacity for generation. And speaking of neutronium, I think it's time. Yes, it is time for the first of our Mark III reactors and all of their constituent parts. Casings, glass, ports, power, bring me that nuclear horizon! And as finicky as reactors are to build, and I mean this one still took me forever, the reward is ever worth it. We already have Americium, and we just need a Nequadria extractor. Yeah, that's right, Nequadria. Write that comment. I know how it's pronounced. I know how I'm meant to say it, but I'm going to call it Nequada and Nequadria. Write that comment. Come on, do it. Yeah, that's right. Nequadria extractor to finish off the neutronium craft. It's slow, power-hungry, and expensive, but hot damn is it the best metal in the game. Neutronium is finally ours. Finally, I'll be able to cryo-sleep until the Stargate is made. But first, I should play with my new toy. Like all new wafer types, the neutronium-doped wafers are simply the best and unlock the final chip of the game, the HASOC. The Hashawk finally cuts out the need for crystal CPUs when crafting our wetware circuits, which were by far the most time-consuming part for us to create. In fact, the system absolutely dominates the craft of 64 wetware processors, which is extremely fulfilling in a way my future family could never be. And by using Neutronium wafers for all of our chips, we max out our circuit craft and energy hatch crafting potential. And speaking of energy hatches, I smell the UHV energy hatch nearby, and it smells sour. We don't even need to make coils for it, it's just a direct upgrade of the UV hatch, but we just need one more HPCA to pull off the research, so there it is! Ah, the best energy hatches. Finally, these are going to change the game. But all I can think about right now is the sweet release of Chilly Sleep. It is time for the Blast Chiller, finally removing one of the greatest bottlenecks of our production, cooling ingots. We're going to be running this thing off of UHV power hatches, so we'll need a UHV converter, which requires the ever-lengthy to make Stellarium alloy. Wow, that is going to take a while. Well, while we wait, I'll be organizing all the I/O for the chiller, as well as giving a companion chiller to cool down helium gas for it. And I think I'll use tag exporters for this. Hopefully they don't break again, because that sucked. But after everything is all set up, our Stellarium is, well, it's not even close to being done, but for you, editing says it's done. We definitely want a passive Stellarium, and I actually use an ME requester block to keep the reagents in stock for it, since they're pretty expensive in general, and I want to keep the passiving on a minimum for these things. But all of that aside, we have the converter, we have the wires, we have the hatches. It is finally time for me to sleep, to freeze, to wait for Stargate.